No, go ahead.
All right, so I'm looking at the morality behind gene patents, and for the second meeting, I just went through PubMed, the journal article database, and I just looked up a bunch of articles that are related to gene patenting. I found that they published a bunch in the 90s because that's when they started the Human Genome Sequencing Project. So there was a lot of like moral and ethical probably debate surrounding sequencing the human genome. So I got a bunch of great articles from around that time period. One talked about um, the how the church's view would be on patenting the human genome, and the church recognized how there was value in genetic engineering, but it should only be used to benefit the human person. And they
Right.
also talked about the market's view in this argument, which was kind of like a more libertarian standpoint where humans make their own economic decisions in regards to what they think is good. But obviously, it's kind of at fault because the market isn't neutral and influences individuals' choices, which I remember us reading about that for one of the readings we had in class.
Right.
Or I think it was the Sandel book.
Right.
Um, there was another one that was a more recent paper in 2020 that talked about like an actual gene editing system, which was CRISPR, the CRISPR system.
Mhm.
And they looked at it on a more global scale. So they actually included agriculture, but they brought up a bunch of great points and human applications as well. And they talked about the policy of different countries and how their policy is kind of outdated on biotechnology, especially in regards to human genes and biotech patents. Um, in this paper, they ended up believing that nations should bind to like an international agreement on pretty strict genome laws. So that was more of kind of like a policy paper, which was in 2020 a newer paper. They finished in 2003. So I figured we get some old ones and some new ones to kind of get different perspectives. Um, and then this paper in 1991 talked about, this is before the Genome Project was finished, and he was really wondering about who should own the data from sequencing genes, who should benefit from the results, and who should make the decisions surrounding this. And he also thinks that there should be an international commission to be formed. And a lot of the papers seem like they see that society interests should supersede proprietary rights, which I found was interesting. There was another paper, another recent paper published in 2020 that talked about how the ethical concerns and attitudes towards human gene patents in the Chinese press. So they talked about how gene patents and gene technologies are discussed in the press, specifically the Chinese press. Um, and essentially, it came down to how the press there is not really taking an active role in fostering discussion about human gene patents and the broader ethical and societal implications. So I found that interesting how even, pretty recently, we're not really engaging in this discussion as much as we should be, since gene patents are something that have already started and it's probably going to continue even more in the future as we advance. And then let's see, there was this other paper from 2019 that talked about if donors have the right to their own gene information, their genes being sequenced. And they came to the conclusion that we don't have mixed labor with creating our genes, and therefore the human genome cannot be said to be part of private ownership based on some idea of self-ownership. But they also acknowledge that limiting incentives through not having these patents decreases innovation in society. So there must be like a balancing of these two interests. So they kind of took two different points. But yeah, I kind of just went all over the place, looked at a bunch of different articles, and we'll have to deliberate them much further before I come to a conclusion about how I'm going to create this project. But that's essentially it. Yeah.
Okay. So good. That's great. So remind me, I know we had this conversation before, but remind me, is this question emerging out of your service in some way? Can you remind me of the connection?
Yeah. Well, it was of service, a course of study, or previous academic work. And my service work is kind of more volunteer with not really genes, but the research I'm doing on campus, my senior thesis and the work I did over the summer under the first program was all about developmental genetics and developmental biology. So I figured it kind of goes hand in hand with that, and it'd be
Okay.
something, the most interesting thing I could write about.
Okay, no, good. Thank you for the reminder. Okay, so it might be helpful in a paper like this to what's going on? Oh, sorry, my computer just spoke to me. But it might be helpful in a paper like this to have a section at the beginning where you kind of describe what exactly you're talking about. Like give an example of a patent in the genetic space. I guess I mean, obviously you could use like some of the work you're doing in your lab. I mean, there's certain things that are probably getting patented, or maybe not. But I mean, but those are animal genes, right? And then is it happening in the human genome space, and what exactly is being patented? I think we talked a bit about the difference between patenting a process by which you learn something versus what you learn itself. Like, and that one article you talked there at the end, that does the donor have a right to the DNA information? And the answer is no, because the donor didn't
have any labor,
didn't add value through his labor on his DNA, which is, Sandel talks about that a bit in the discussion about libertarianism, is like we own ourselves, right? And it's based on the Lockean notion that property is, something becomes your property when you apply your labor to it. And so if that's true, then as this author points out, my DNA was not created by me. I didn't do anything to make my DNA, therefore I can't really be said to own it. But what's weird about that is that libertarians and people in that world that would kind of put this argument forward is that they do think we own ourselves. Like, if I didn't own myself in some fundamental way, then I couldn't ever own anything, because, you know what I mean? Like, it's weird to say that I don't own my DNA, since that is who I am.
Yeah, no.
So anyway, that'll be, it's just to keep in mind that that's there's something kind of nonsensical about that argument. And I know you were just sketching it, so maybe it's deeper, maybe there's a development of it that escapes that criticism. But so it also seems like you need to have a little bit of this is really an intellectual property kind of issue, right? So you're gonna, well, before I keep going further, what's your intuition about this whole point of patenting the genes? What do you think? Like, what's your initial, if you had to make a judgment right now about whether it's good or bad, what would you say?
I would say it's good.
Okay, so so it seems like it would be helpful to making that case to offer a defense of intellectual property as the kind of thing that ought to be protected from other people appropriating it for their own uses without at least crediting, if not paying, the owner of the information. But that's where the tricky philosophical problem is, right? So if you want to say that someone who discovers, quote unquote, discovers a human gene owns that gene, then what's the relationship between the owner of the gene and the person in whom the gene is. Like it seems like, I mean, it seems like if I had a gene that you as a scientist discovered and now you patented it, so now you own that gene that's in my body.
Mhm.
What
Yeah,
does what does that mean for our relationship? Do you own me?
yeah, one of them one of the articles actually talks a little bit about that. And they said that they found no moral compelling reasons as to why human gene patents shouldn't exist, but genetically engineered humans can't be patented, or else it would be slavery since you're owning that genetically engineered. Like, I guess, yeah, I have to read through it more, but it was something like the patents are okay, but when you modify a gene in someone, you can't claim ownership of that person or of that gene inside that person. So it's kind of nuanced. I guess I gotta
Well,
dissect
that's
it a little
right.
further.
That's gonna be critically important. What
Yeah.
is it? If what you just said is accurate,
Mhm.
then it doesn't seem like I'm patenting the gene.
Mhm.
I'm patenting something else, which might be, like I said, like we were talking about earlier, the process. Like, how did I, you know what I mean? So anyway, that's why it's really important to kind of give an example of what you mean by a patent
Yeah.
and then apply that to the realm of genetics. Like, what are we talking about?
Mhm.
Because once you kind of can be clear for the reader what exactly it is that you're talking about in terms of what's being patented, then it
Mhm.
seems like that gives you some clarity to the moral questions that you're going to want to
So
ask.
definitely like a really broad introduction about genes
Yeah, and patents and how those two fit together,
yeah.
and give some examples of what you're talking about. Um, so okay, so so you think it's good to patent whatever it is that we're patenting, and you think it's good to patent? Is your argument like like I mean, I guess, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess a big part of why you think it's a good thing is because the function that patents play in research and development.
Um, I mean, that would be a part of it. Yeah, the innovation aspects, but also another part would be just for the new for for like if you could advance medicine and increase care, um, there should I don't see any moral reason to go against research that could alleviate human suffering. So that's another reason. The innovation is a reason. Um,
Right, but it seems to me that that idea of helping other people is depends upon the argument about R&D, right? Because the, the we want to have patent protections because it encourages innovation, because the people doing the innovation know that their investment in the innovation, in the process of the innovation, is going to reap them some kind of, they're going to get their money back because they can, the patent is going to protect other people from taking that and using it themselves. So they're going to have to pay them in order to use it, right? So they're going to get their investment back. So what incentivizes them is they're not going to lose their shirt here. They're going to recoup their costs, right?
yeah.
Now, okay, that it's also the case, if we do that, if we protect patents, we're also going to encourage people to, or we're going to incentivize people to do research that's going to help human beings.
Mhm. Yeah, I think
It doesn't seem to me that the argument that we're going to help human beings with this research is sufficient
mhm.
to make the case for patents. I think you have to really focus on, you're making a utilitarian argument, really, that
Mhm.
patents are the best system in which to encourage the greatest investment in R&D, which in turn will make more likely the discovery of of beneficial therapeutic
Mhm.
interventions for human beings, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I think. There's like a first this, then this. they're not independent of each other, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess another part of my argument would be the surrounding policies of these gene patents should include some protection that serves just overall society first before like these special interest groups of the people that are researching them, or the donors or the receivers or the inventors and the donors. It's going to be part of it too, so it's not strictly the innovation part, but I see how that would follow the medical advances follow the innovation incentive. But
right, so okay, so that, I mean, so that brings in another level of complexity, because your point about societal impact, because you're trying to balance the concerns about societal concerns or responsibilities, or potential harms or whatever, against the benefits of innovation. And you're trying to kind of arrive at a space where you're trying to be as supportive of these incentivization kind of models that could have all kinds of positive benefits, at the same time recognizing the potential harms, but so you want to safeguard against those.
Safeguard against those in the policies that.
But right, but that seems kind of tricky, right? Because given the unknowns around genetic engineering and genetic science, it's hard to know for sure that it's hard to know for sure that some path of research is not going to be harmful, since that's the reason I'm doing the research, because I don't really know, right? So how can I safeguard the public if I'm engaged in research which by definition provides me very little information about possible consequences?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like it's a really tricky question.
That's going to be a major part of it too, since we're just right on the edge of this new technology. It's like one of my main points would probably be to just proceed with a lot of caution, examine the implications of these gene patents as they arise in society, and be willing to change like the laws and policies with the new evidence we gain through the research, since it's just so new.
Right. And of course, one of the things you already pointed out is that you're finding out that that these conversations that you think are so important aren't even happening, yet the science continues to advance, right?
Yeah.
So it's just not something that we're good at as human beings, is thinking about this, keeping up with the sciences from a moral perspective. There's all kinds of evidence that we do research much faster than we do ethical reflection about that research.
Yeah, it's definitely true.
We're always catching up. Like the law is always regulation is always catching up to where science is, which has been very beneficial for human beings, but also can be problematic, like with that Chinese scientist who used CRISPR on the twins in utero. He did that without permission. There's, any number of things could have went wrong. As far as I know, those kids are healthy, which is a good thing, but it could easily gone the other way, right? So, all right, well, so you've got a lot of reading to do, but have you been taking notes? This recording you'll have available to you if you want to go back, because I think we've identified some major components of the project that you're going to want to develop. And the other thing is to remind you we'll see how it develops, but this is such it's a relatively complex topic that you're interested in. So it could get a little overwhelming in terms of this one project, like,
Yeah.
So you want to, so one of the things we're going to have to work at together is to kind of focus your attention on the most important things, realizing that you can't address everything.
Yeah.
But you're going to focus on the most important things for your moral argument,
Yeah.
which is really what the meat and potatoes of this assignment is, right? Is to get to that. Okay. Do you have any questions or any concerns about this?
As of now, no, not right now.
Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording.